Welcome to episode 10 of the Brooklyn Podcast with yours truly, Anthony Puccio, my co-host Colin Helwig. Colin, last time that we spoke, the Nets were surprising people with actually how good they were playing. Now they've lost three straight. They lost two at the hands of the Orlando Magic, one at the hands of the Chicago Bulls, who are also in the middle of the pack like them. It feels like we're in the seesaw between tanking, not tanking. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What's the vibe when you're at the games?
The vibe at the games, the vibe at the games are good. No one was happy after the two Orlando losses. But here's the thing: the Chicago Bulls waxed the Nets last night. But I would be willing to bet that more Chicago Bulls fans would trade their situation for the situation of a Brooklyn Net fan right now. Because if you're a Nets fan and you were enjoying that ride that they were on, like, yeah, that was great. Ton of upsets. Who doesn't love an upset? Who doesn't love beating Kevin Durant, the guy who jumped out of here a couple years ago? But they're still on, like, you wrote it down, you colored a seesaw. That's the nickname for this episode, and that's what it is. They're still leaning both ways. They're towing the line between they can still tank, they can win games. They're giving teams not last night, but they gave Orlando a good run for their money in the second game. I don't think there's anything to be upset about. I think that if we're on this 3-game losing streak right now, but this was bound to happen, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you could chalk it up to injuries, but I do think that when you look at a Chicago Bulls type of game like last night, where there's eight guys out, four who have started this season, um, it's hard to believe that they're not looking at their record, looking at everything. Where you know we're going to be cautious tonight, against the Bulls on a second night of a back-to-back. We're going to be cautious in these games now. For me, I'm not saying that they're faking these injuries, that they're lying about them, but hey, against the Bucks last year, they got fined for it. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say that they're absolutely seeing everything that we are when they're 9 and 10, and they have an eighth seed tied for seventh seed spot, and saying, you know what, like, let's be a little bit more selective with who we play and when we play them. Let's get an evaluation for some of these younger guys. And I think that's what the Bulls game was, honestly.
Yeah, I do think the one factor that makes a difference, though, is that it's Jordy Fernandez who wants to win every game. I don't know. I believe it when he says that. He seems that way with how he runs his team and how he coaches and how he speaks about it. And it's a different situation. Jacques Vaughn last year did that. And I think there was a B2B coming up, or it was the back end of a B2B. And the Nets were still trying to win at that point also. So I think it was in the name of like health. And they were just, they got some sheet that said, hey, these guys are at an injury risk, factor in the hits they took the last game, the fouls, blah, 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 whatever, put it through an algorithm. And it told them to do that. This is different now because if it is that, then it's probably in the name of, caution, but like tanking,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't want to say it, but like I feel like every decision you make has to be hedged with the idea that like, what good is it if, Nick Claxton goes out and gets hurt really bad and is hurt for a long time in the years where we're not prioritizing the future. The future is the priority right now, no matter how much we want to like dance around that. So it's a similar but different, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Again, I can't imagine that Sean Marks is watching these college highlights and feeling good when they're in the playoffs. And I feel like they are in a position where they want to compete. They want to hang around. Like, you said you were very thankful on our last episode about the new lottery odds. I think that they really want to be in that lottery odd area, but also competing enough where fans are still entertained. There's still a reason to watch potentially for the playoffs, right? Like, for me, it feels like they want their cake and they want to eat it too, but like they're trying to pick. And now it's December, and I think that they've picked. Cam Thomas getting hurt and being out for a month, in my opinion, was kind of a dagger into this whole situation because guys have been in and out. So it's a weird situation. It's not a
Do you
bad
think
situation.
do you think when those guys come back, when you said they made a decision, like, do you think that they're gonna be a little bit less? It's hard to put a definition on like going for wins. Obviously, you go out there and you play your best guys and you try to score your points. But do you think maybe they'll be like pulling the starters a little bit early? Like maybe Jalen Wilson gets more burned than like Cam Johnson, even when Cam Johnson comes back.
Yeah, I think so, and it's because we're looking at the December 15th trade window, right? And we've discussed this, Colin. Like, why risk? And you've seen Cam Johnson. He's getting dinged up every night, like almost every night. It feels like he's got an
Mhm.
ankle injury here, whatever it might be. Risking these veterans getting hurt when they really are trade assets in some capacity. Um, for what? To win some moot games doesn't feel like it makes sense with their recipe, right? So I think for Sean Marks, he's looking at, yeah, like, how can we get, Dayron Sharp is back now. How can we get Sharp back in the lineup? How can we get him minutes? That was the point of this whole season, basically, was just to evaluate this young talent, see who's worth keeping around for the long term, or at least past this year as they enter this rebuild. So I think now we are actually getting into it. Now it's December, and when I was working in the media as a beat writer for the Nets, and I was down at those games, and an executive told me, Pooch, you know, you have a real good idea of where your team is headed come the second week of December. And I think come the second week of this month, we'll have a good idea of where the Nets stand. Again, they've lost three straight. They're starting to fall in the standings, but they're still right there because the East is just so freaking bad. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, it's been a seesaw, so it's very strange. But you touched on Nick Claxton, and I want to talk about Claxton because he just got paid $97 million. He's played in 16 games this season. He's got two ejections. His numbers have regressed. His playing time has also regressed. Um, it feels like he doesn't really have a consistent role, but he's kind of acting up. Like, what are you seeing from him? What are your takeaways from watching these games and watching Claxton?
Yeah. So I mean, I know you asked about like what's kind of like the feeling like in the building and like talking about, during this last couple stretch. And I don't know about anything internally with the team, but I can tell you that we're not the only ones who have been curious about this. Everyone we've been talking, the other beat writers and myself about where it's like something is up. It's really weird the fact that you paid him all this money and all of a sudden he's not playing a whole lot. Now, I don't know about we always know Claxton's been a fiery guy. Technicals aren't something you love to see, but like, shit happens in the heat of the moment.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't chalk any of the playing time, the reduced playing time up to that. The only thing that I can put my finger on is that Jordy Fernandez is a very modern coach, and he speaks about 3-pointers all the time and saying, what we'll ask him like, how did Cam Johnson play tonight? And he will immediately bring up like, oh, he took this many threes. I would have liked to see him take like this many more threes. Or he'll say like he went 3 of 3 from the field or from deep, but I want those attempts to go up. So the only thing that I can wrap my head around really right now, unbeknownst if there's any drama behind the scenes, is that Nick Claxton is not a 3-point shooter. Ben Simmons, before he was hurt, was needed on the floor as a creator whenever Dennis Schroeder needed a breather. And the spacing between those two guys does not allow Jordy Fernandez to play the offense that he believes the team should be playing if they want to win games. Now, I don't think that makes it I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense because, again, when you shelled out Claxton that money, you pay a guy that money, you pay him to play more than, I don't know how many minutes he played last night. I think he played 24. You would think he would play
yeah,
more than that. We can't pretend like the injury factor isn't a thing too, but that's the only thing because Jordy loves taking threes. This
yeah.
team loves taking threes because Jordy has instilled that in this team. And that is the only thing is that sometimes I can imagine if he's looking at it and he's like, what should I put in Nick Claxton or should we go small for a little bit? I could see him leading, let's go small for a little bit. He did it
Yeah,
last night and he didn't really have to. Both those guys, Dayron Sharp and Clax were active. Nets closed the game small.
yeah. But by your logic, that doesn't bode well for the Nets and for Sean Marks with that contract. I didn't I personally didn't think that shelling out for Nick Claxton was the best idea to start the rebuild. I really like Clax as a player, but I find it very hard to start your rebuild by paying Cam Johnson, a power forward, stretch four, who's played fantastic this year, by the way, but didn't fit the mold of a rebuild. Mind you, it was a different time then.
Yeah.
All the money that they did. Uh, um, I don't. think that a lobs and blocks. Granted, I know what he does on the defensive end. The Clax could switch. He's fantastic. He's so versatile. But I don't think that you should build or pay a lobs and blocks predicated big in this modern era of NBA, $100 million because of everything that you're saying right now. Every team wants to chuck threes, and if you have one guy on the team that doesn't, one guy on the floor that doesn't or can't, it screws up your whole offense. And in this case, if Ben Simmons is on the floor, you can't play Claxton. So
Hmm.
that's going to lead me to my next point. I'm almost looking at things from a front office perspective, and I'm thinking that we kind of know that it's not a secret that Claxton and Ben Simmons cannot play together. And you've been very adamant about that, as have many Nets fans. I'm curious if they're kind of using this time to say, we're not going to burn Nick out. We're going to get Ben some burn. They're both averaging the same amount of time per game, right? What can we drive Ben's value up to a point where maybe we can dump him off to another team? Or, I don't see them buying him out, but can we drop him off to another team? Can we include him in a trade if we attach him to Finney Smith or Cam Johnson and take back a second rounder? You lose leverage in a trade, but my point being is that, are they trying to use this time to kind of leverage Ben's value, get him playing time, while also knowing that those two simply cannot coexist on the floor because that's just going to bring Ben's value down too.
Yeah, I think that could be it, and I'm glad you brought up the front office perspective because Ben Simmons' contract is about to expire. The Nets signed Nick Claxton to a multi-year deal. Even if maybe you don't believe that like Nick Claxton is going to be a part of the Nets team when they are competing again, what Sean Marks has shown a habit of doing is protecting his investments and not losing guys for free. That's why he traded Spencer Dinwiddie, who really wasn't giving the team anything. He was like, he's going to be out the door. Let's get Schroeder. That was a great trade.
Yeah,
Traded Royce O'Neal, who was probably going to leave. He didn't want to lose Nick Claxton for anything. So you can always sign Nick Claxton. And his contract, by the way, yeah, it's a lot now because he has all those years. It's the beginning of it. All those years are tacked onto it. But that was, I believe he's 20 million a year. That was the benchmark. That was what everyone
yeah,
who had a pulse on what his market might be said. If it's under 20 mil, then the Nets got to steal. If it's over 20 mil, then Claxton fleece the next. And it was right at 20 mil. So it's not like they overpaid or anything. So I think that's what that was. Maybe they do have plans to ship him off. And maybe that is part of this. But I think that it makes sense to resign him either way so that you just don't lose him for nothing. You never want to lose a player for nothing. That's how you lose in this league as a GM. Ben is a little bit of a different story because he's a little bit more, his market is harder to define because who the hell knows how healthy he's going to be, how productive he can be, blah, 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 blah. We've been doing this for 3 years. So to answer your question, yes, I do think it would make sense for them to kind of build his value up. Claxton is locked down for years. People know that he can play. You can still trade him if maybe that contract isn't like looking too good in terms of your rebuild as the years pack on. But I think, yeah, you don't want to lose a guy for free.
yeah. No, I don't. I don't want to be conspiracy or anything like that. But you look at the playing time, you look at how it's dispersed, 24 minutes each for both of them. Like it is spread out very interestingly, in my opinion. Like we know that they can't be on the floor together, and we're trying to raise the value of this one guy. So maybe we could ship him off. Maybe we could ship him off. And worst thing, Colin, at the end of the year, Ben Simmons is off the books. Nick Claxton, he always has room to grow. I don't have anything against him as a player. I look at things like kind of similar to how the Giants didn't re-sign Saquon because they didn't want to pay a running back. They let the market play them, and they played themselves in the process. Like I'm curious if the Nets kind of did something similar, but at the same time, I feel that way. I know, I know, like I know, but you know, with Claxton's contract too, like it's loaded at the front. It gets more inexpensive at the end of it, right? I think it goes down to 21 and 20 the last 2 years. And Mikal Bridges' team-friendly contract is what helped them nab all those picks and make him actually more valuable than he is.
Mhm.
So I do think that there's an evaluation period. I don't think they're getting rid of Nick Claxton anytime soon, but it's more I do think they want to see what his deal is and whether he fits in long term. Because
Mm,
again, they have four first round picks this draft. They're gonna have a whole starting lineup if they really want to.
yeah, yeah,
So I just you know what I saw that ejection the other day, the flagrant two. I thought it was a little bogus on the refs to eject someone with 5 seconds left, but Clax's immaturity and his frustration, letting his emotions get to him, it bothers me a little bit. You know, he's one of the he's somebody that's been around this locker room, this team, this organization. He got the bag. He's expected to be a leader, expected to be a little bit more mature, and just simply not get ejected with 5 seconds left in the game. You know,
yeah. I mean, one thing I want to tack onto this before we move on, though, is that especially in that Orlando game, I don't agree with him not playing a whole lot of minutes because Dennis Schroeder wasn't out there. And I know we got a mailbag question about is Clax being overlooked offensively? And my answer to that is yes. I think the Nets offense right now has not looked too hot. And you have a versatile center who can blow by guys, who can do things on the court that not a lot of other centers can do, that can rim run past any other center in the league. I don't understand why he's not playing minutes. You know, like
yeah.
uh,
Well,
so
that's
I'm not a part of the party that is like, yeah, let's put Claxton on the bench and let Ben play to drive his value up.
right.
Even in the context of a rebuild, I don't like it.
Well, it's great for the tank. It's great for the tank
Sure,
to
sure,
play Ben over him
yes.
if you want to lose games. And that question
Well,
was
Ben's
from
not playing right now either, so
no, but
better for the tank.
yeah, water's wet. That question was from Gerard himself, asking if Nick Claxton gets overlooked offensively. And you touched on this earlier. You might as well tackle this. You know, this is an offense that predicates around threes. It's hard for a guy like Claxton to really get his own shot up. It doesn't really look like they have too much dribble penetration in the paint, especially with Cam Thomas out. They don't really have too many guys outside of Schroeder who can really kind of get to the rack, create for themselves, or look for that lob. With Schroeder, he's a little bit smaller, so it's also harder to get those alley oops up. Like we saw Claxton these past couple of years make a living off of guys just driving to the hole and just throwing it up there anywhere, and him
Mhm.
going to get it. So do you feel that he's overlooked because they have a lack of like they don't have enough ball creators that get to the paint? Do you feel that the ball is swinging around the perimeter too much? Like, does he? Basically what I'm trying to ask you, Colin? Is this a problem that is going to continue and linger because of Jordy Fernandez's system? Because Jordy is going to be here, and we know that.
I think it will, honestly, and I think right now I don't like it because the Nets offense hasn't looked good. Like I'm all modern, shoot a ton of threes. I love it. I think that's what you got to do if you want to win right now. But this is the year to find out like how good can these younger guys be. And Nick Claxton, it's a small sample size because they didn't do it a whole lot, but Nick Claxton one on one in the paint has been a very efficient play for the Brooklyn Nets over the years. He's got great touch around the rim. This is the year to, throw him the ball and let him do it. And they should especially be doing it right now when Cam Johnson isn't playing
Yeah,
and all these
yeah.
other guys. And Schroeder missed the game the other day. Cam Thomas isn't playing. All of your best shooters aren't playing right now. Again, I hate that everything has to be clouded with, yeah, the context of the rebuild and maybe it makes sense to tank, whatever, whatever. From the jump this season, even if you discount the last 2 games, it's been about no, let's at least try to win and see how it goes. Might lose anyway, but let's at least try to win. Trying to win right now, I think with the injuries that they have, it makes a lot more sense to feed Clax in the post and see how he goes and try to develop him more and let him not the offense through him, but give him more touches. It makes way more sense to do that than to just huck threes with guys who aren't the most polished 3-point shooters.
I believe 2 years ago, 2 seasons ago, he led the NBA in field goal percentage. If I'm not
He did.
mistaken,
He did.
71%, 70.5. Um, Kind of shows that maybe Jordy has a hard time adjusting his game style and adjusting his game plan. You know, they're so predicated on this run and gun 3-point offense that, when these guys are out, that really embody that type of offensive system, and you could take
Mm.
advantage down low with someone like Claxton. You think maybe he's having a hard time adjusting to that?
Maybe. Are you talking about Jordy or are you talking about Clax?
Maybe Jordy. They're so set on playing a certain type of way that when these guys are out, you have 8 guys out. but you have an advantage with Claxton down low. You say, feed him the rock. He's a big man down low in one-on-one situations. He's reliable to get you a bucket if he's got that position. Are they not capitalizing that? Do you think that's on Jordy? Do you think that's on the point guards or what?
It's probably a little bit of everything. Like I'm not gonna come on here. We've been singing Jordy's praises since we started this podcast. I'm not gonna come back here and walk that back and say, oh, he's
No.
doing it all wrong. He needs to be feeding Claxton. No. It was working before everyone got hurt. I'm putting all this in the context of the fact that Cam Thomas is hurt. Cam Johnson is hurt. When he's playing, he's looks like he's limping around on one leg.
Yeah.
Schroeder missed a game. Like in this recent stretch, I would have liked to see more of Claxton.
Yeah.
Like there's no perfect answer. There's no offense that is the best offense in the world because it just shoots a ton of threes and ignores their center. And there's no offense in the world that just has back to the basket, best center in the world, 2-point high efficiency shot quality or whatever. And that's the best offense in the world. Like center still exists for a reason, for as much as people such as myself love the 3 ball and think that's the way of the future in the league. I just think you got to find a way to strike the balance.
Yeah. All fair, all fair. And I just again I wanted to bring this up because I feel like I'm watching these games and Nick Claxton is kind of turned into like an invisible man. Like
Yeah.
until he commits a hard foul or kind of has this like fake tough guy, whatever, flagrant two, like whatever you want to call it. And I'm not like attacking him by saying that, but like it just feels like I only notice him when it's for the wrong reasons, and maybe that's on my end, but I'm not seeing him like really a part of this team right now. He's kind of like a disappearing act. But I do want to move on. Mike Scotto of Hoops Hype had a report saying that in regards to the trade window being open December 15th, that Brooklyn isn't likely to get more than multiple second rounders for somebody like Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, both who are having great years, but because they're on expiring deals, teams are looking at them as short-term rentals and don't want to give up a first-round pick. What do you make of that?
I think Scotto's got great sources because I think that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, Royce O'Neal was having a great year last year, and he got dealt for Keita Bates Diop in second rounders. So I think it makes sense. And I think the stuff coming out where it was like, oh, they want a first round pick or they want 2 first round picks. That's Sean Marks doing what he did with Mikal Bridges, where he was like, hey, he's untouchable. So that opposing front offices hear that and say, okay, we got to put our best foot forward, and this guy's going to have a high asking price, and puts out the idea that these guys are super valuable, and that just only bodes well for Brooklyn's front office.
Yeah, and
What do
shout
you
out to
think?
Scotto, obviously one of the hardest working people in this industry. Always with good sources, good work. Always showing up at the games. Scotto, if you're watching, paisano. But on that note, with the veteran trade value, I think Cam Johnson is in a different area because he has a longer contract. He's playing his ass off this year, and he will be super valuable to a championship contending team. There's no reason why, if the Nets are looking to trade him, there's no reason why, in my opinion, they can't get a first round pick, at least a future one back. But when it comes to Dorian Finney-Smith and Schroeder, I understand the expiring deals, the rental. Two things that kind of bother me. One, trade deadline 2023. Brian Lewis in the New York Post reported that the Nets had declined 2 first round picks for Dorian Finney Smith. So that would be a loss. that would be a loss for what? Like what did they do in that time since
Yeah.
then? Sean Marks would have fumbled the bag on 2 first round picks, and we will call it what it is if he trades Dorian Finney Smith for a second round pick. If that's what the market's calling for, then so be it. But he lost. Two is that I am curious, like, how much does he value these guys, right? Like, does he value them more than other teams? Does he? We've always talked about this with Kenny Atkinson. I brought this up, like with Damari Carroll being in that locker room. These veterans, they love Dennis Schroeder here. Like, I don't know if he's just gonna give him up for a bag of peanuts, unless Schroeder says I want out.
Yeah. I mean, you're asking the magic question, like we don't know. Like Sean Marks told us forever that he wanted to build a team around Mikal Bridges, and I do think he traded him because I do think him doing that, he wasn't, fully believe that. Part of him was trying to drive trade value up. It obviously worked, but there's really no way of knowing until we hit that deadline. I do think trading for your picks back to regain control of them is, if anything, the clearest sign that he will try to offload their contracts. It makes sense. That was the biggest move in terms of like, hey, we want to have younger talent and rebuild, like really, really rebuild this time, not retool with Mikal Bridges.
I think that they both get traded at whatever expense, and it's what you said earlier. Sean Marks wants to cover his losses no matter what, or whatever it is that he invests in. He's going to get something, anything back. But like I said, and I will reiterate this: Scotto's got good sources. I believe what he's saying, and if they could only get second rounders back for Dorian Finney-Smith after rejecting a trade that would have brought back 2 first rounders last year, that would be a total catastrophe for them.
Yes and no. I will say this. That was because they still were probably in the mindset of not trading DFS last year, was we want to build around Mikal. I bet you the difference in picks they got from Mikal for waiting that long is more than what it will be if they were to trade Dorian Finney-Smith for those 2 first-round picks right there. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense. I don't know if I'm
Oh, it
wording
does.
it right
It
mathematically
does.
wise, but
It does. But again, that limbo phase, the directionless attitude they had, or whatever, thinking they had a direction with McHale, it is kind of coming back to bite them in the butt in that context. If
mm,
I'm making sense with that, but
sure. Yeah, yeah.
it is December, Colin, and come February, teams might be desperate. Injuries are going to happen. It's natural. Uh, Teams are going to need the DFSs of the world, that 3 and D type of player, and I don't like to mark him as that, but that really is what he is labeled as around the league, a 3 and D wing. You if a point guard goes down, you know that you can count on Dennis Schroeder to come in and kind of lead a unit. So he's been around. So right now, I understand that is probably what the market says, but you never know come February, when they're actually desperate. Cam Thomas, they're 1-3 without him. Shot chucker on a bad team or a good player on a actually average, solid team.
Why is it all you brought it back down with the actually solid team. I thought you were gonna say great team. It's always one or the other swinging super hard, the pendulum the other way. He was never a shot chucker. Well, the Nets are kind of not the best team in the world, but he was never a shot chucker, or maybe he was, but he's not right now. I've said this 100 times this year. He's making the right reads. He's doing the right thing. He's shooting the ball when he's got enough space for it. When the doubles are coming, he's passing it. It is a little funny how all of a sudden, like, the dialogue around him, like, silent after the team is losing without him.
Well, I had tweeted when Cam Thomas got hurt, and I said Jordy Fernandez has been fantastic, but let's give Cam Thomas his due. They're
Yeah.
9-10. He's averaging 25 a game. He's the leading scorer on a team that's in the playoffs right now. And somebody had said to me, with all respect to them, he said, "This is way too early of a hot take. You don't know what this unit's going to look like without him. They've played better without him in the past. Looking, and like almost looking too much into the analytics, the stats of the past, where it's just as simple as this: they were 9-10. He's a leading scorer on a good basketball team that's playing hard. Jordy obviously has his hands all over this. This is not disregarding anything that he's done or this team has done as a whole, this organization has done. But simply put, that he is the leading scorer on a good basketball team, no matter what the injuries are. I feel that, and I said this to my buddy last week, 2 weeks ago when they beat the Suns. I said, if Cam Thomas is on the floor, which he wasn't that night, if Cam Thomas is on the floor, I always feel like they have a shot, which is like that's high praise. That's how I felt with KD. Like if you put KD out there with 4 other guys, they have a shot because you could go for 40, 50 any night. And that's how I
Mhm.
feel about Cam Thomas. And I'm not saying he's Kevin Durant, but the Nets miss him right now. If you're actually trying to win games, it's not. This is not a. They're better without him. The ball is hopping more. Their defense looks a lot better without him. This is not a scenario where we can say that. So I was a little fired up because I was like, yeah, Cam Thomas deserves his flowers, and he's out for probably another month. The Nets say 3 to 4 weeks. That's what's reported. I always believe if they say 3 to 4 weeks, it's more like 5 to 7. especially if they continue to lose games. There's going to be absolutely no rush to get him back.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the injury stuff, and I think we all have. I don't know. I still have hamstring PTSD from the James Harden days, but
Yeah,
I do think he's been so important, and it shined even more in that game without Schroeder because they didn't really have a ball handler. We talked about how much the Nets love to drive and kick, shoot threes. To do that first, you got to get through the point of attack defense. You got to get past the two guards at the top of the key, and Cam Thomas is so good at that. He's always been good at that. He wasn't as good as passing out of him until he was this year, but he is this year. So he's been very important even outside of like the shot making stuff. And I think I agree
yeah,
with you too about the fact that he can go out and win you every game. We spend so much time on his intangibles and the little things that we forget how he's good at the hardest thing, which is hitting contested shots that he creates by himself. And you can't really
yeah,
teach that.
yeah. With two hands in his face too.
Yeah. Yeah.
He hits those like Kyrie shots now.
Mhm.
He's on that level. And again, I don't want to be name dropping all these legends and putting Cam Thomas in comparison, but it's a similar vibe in the sense that yeah, he can put the ball in the hoop and he can win them games single handedly.
Mhm.
Moving on, Colin. I don't know if this is news or not. We don't have to drill this one too long, but Ben Simmons is hurt again.
Oh
And
boy.
yeah,
Never heard of that.
you know, wish him well, wish him health,
Yes. We
safety,
do.
and all the best. But he said his quote was that that he's been it's something that I've been dealing with the last year and a half. So I've got to monitor it and stay on it. Like, do you have any comments or thoughts about him playing through this injury? Like he's actually been hurt lately. Is that what he's
Okay,
saying?
so he's talking about his leg, I believe, his
Yeah,
knee.
yeah,
Okay, that makes a little more sense because the back thing was apparently axed, fix it this year, good to go. But yeah,
yeah,
between the back was what knocked him out for the rest of the year last year. He had been dealing with knee stuff leading up to it. So I don't know. I'm not shocked by it. Like I don't really have much to make out of it. Like Ben Simmons is injured, the sky is blue. It's the knee thing. I think people might see that, and people who aren't familiar with his injury history might freak out and read that and say, "Oh, I thought the back thing was fixed this year." He's not talking about the back thing. He's talking about the knee thing, which has been on and off. I mean, he wasn't going to play. He wasn't going to play last night either because he doesn't play back to backs. So
no,
I think this is a it's not a story, but it's a bigger story for NBA Central or Legion Hoops to tweet out and get a million angry Sixers fans and Knicks fans trolling him than it is like something to actually like lose your head over.
yeah. I I don't have much to say about it. Yeah, you know what? And if I do, I might jump out the window. So we might as well move on. we have we have mailbag questions. We have pick watch. Let's get to a mailbag question, Colin. We want to thank everybody that's listening, that supported the Brooklyn Pod, that's reached out to us, whether it be via Twitter, Instagram, if it's been over email. Thank you guys for these questions. We had a boatload of leftovers, Thanksgiving leftovers from last episode. And I want to give a shout out to Aces. Colin, I'm going to direct this question right at you. In your opinion, once Dayron Sharp returns, which he did last night, how do you think that he fits into this new system?
Well, we just spent the first 20 minutes of today talking about Claxton and perhaps how his non-shooting abilities hinder him in the Nets offense. So there's that. But I'm going to take a different approach on it. When we talked to Jordy before the second game in Orlando, I was on the road in Chicago, but he brought it up there too. I saw in the replay. Dayron Sharp, I think, is the most well-liked guy in the team. Like when the Nets do those like funny videos where like they record the guys like walking in and out of the locker room, like half of them when they're like, oh, like who's the class clown of the group, like, oh, who's the funniest? I remember this from last year. More than half of them said Dayron Sharp. Against Orlando, he spoke about, yeah, we're excited to get him on the court, but also he brings this energy to the locker room. He gets the guys excited. He's well liked. He said that Jordy said the same thing on before the Chicago game. I do think he will be back with the team next year. And I said this before too, because of the injuries, he's going to be a restricted free agent. He's not going to have that much of a market. The team that will want him the most is the team that has been around him the most and benefited from that good energy, him being a well-liked guy, and has seen up front the flashes that he has had on the court. So I think he'll have a role in the team. I think when you get down to X's and O's, that's the real question. That's why we're so confused about Claxton right now. They're different players. They're different bigs. He's a lot bigger. He's not as fast, but he's a better rebounder than Claxton. But in terms of the Jordy system, that's still a question mark. But I think he's well liked in the organization. I would expect him to be back.
Yeah. I think he's back, and he's back on a very cheap deal, like you said, and I don't think his injury history has helped his case to get a big contract, but it's helped the case for both sides and both parties to say, "We'll be patient with you. We like you. We like your game. We wanna keep you around this culture. We wanna see you develop." He's still young.
Yeah.
Um, and I think on his side, if they're supportive and it's like that, yeah, like I want to stay with an organization like this. Now, again, like you said, I don't think it's going to be a bidding war for Dayron Sharp, but regarding his fit into the system, the sample size is small, but he is a 36% 3-point shooter in his career. He
Yeah. How many
can
how many
he,
attempts? How many attempts has he taken?
not a lot. I'll find it for you, Colin, but you know,
I
it's
know he
something.
practices. He practices shooting threes. I've seen him practice shoot threes. That's a
So
whole lot.
he's taken 33 threes. He's hit 12 over the course of his career. It's not
I want I
bad.
want I want Claxton. Everyone should be shooting threes this year. Who the hell cares what happens? Let's develop our players. All you guys shoot a bunch of threes,
Clax
him
Clax was hitting
included.
the Clax was hitting the midi in college,
He was.
which confuses. Like, I understand they don't want to take mid-range and jump shots, but like what that tells me is he has range. Take a step back and then take another step back. But I don't know if it'll ever work for him. But I do think that they'll prioritize bigs. Well, they'll prioritize Dayron Sharp over him, but like you said, there are some upsides that he has that fit the system a little bit better. But I don't think that his contract is going to be anything lucrative or anything that's even really worth talking about.
Yeah. No.
So,
100%.
Aces, appreciate the question. The answer is yes. We do think he's going to stay past the season, just not on an expensive deal. Um, we'll do one more out of the mailbag. This is from two. We got Obi-Wan B and depressed New York fan. No wonder why they're depressed New York fans. I mean, we got St. John's at least, Colin, but shout out to both of you guys. I think they had the same question. Can you talk about Cam Johnson's emergence in play? People they're saying that they didn't think that he was capable of those, 30-point, 40-point outbursts, and it reminds me of that Shaq meme. Sorry, young man, I wasn't familiar with your game.
Yeah. No, he's no Hassan Whiteside, but I do think I said this last episode. I'm going to say it again. I think Cam Johnson is kind of on a Mikal Bridges arc right now. Mikal Bridges when he first got to Brooklyn, where he's getting these opportunities to create his own shot, score down more on the block that were definitely not allowed. He wasn't allowed to do in Phoenix because he wasn't even really starting until that last year. And then when he was starting, he tore a ligament in his knee. So, but Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton pick and roll, and Devin Booker ISO were way more on the top of the Phoenix Suns agenda than it was Cam Johnson, create your own shot on the block, or we're going to do, run a bunch of screens for you so you can run around and pop a three. So he's getting these opportunities that he really never had like the whole rest of his career. Maybe that's still not the best option for you as an offensive team, at least if you're, competing, but he's showing that he can do these things. He's doing it more than we thought he could. I think that it's great for his game. It's good for his confidence. It's good for the Nets too because they're driving his trade value up. Like we've been talking about from the cuff. Good for him. It's just a good story. It's a bummer that he got hurt. I hope he's okay. It's been his injury's been weird. I can't believe he even tried to play against Chicago.
Yeah,
I believe he's questionable tomorrow.
everybody's questionable tomorrow. I mean, they're really playing the Long Island Nets players at this point. Last night was just basically a G League game for them, and
Yeah.
so be it. But Cam Johnson averaging career high 18 points per game. You made the good point. He's able to put the ball on the deck and actually create his own shot, which is something I don't think I've ever seen before. But last year he was kind of tucked in the corner or tucked on the wing and just expected to be a stretch four. I don't know. I'm not sold that they want to trade him. Like If again, if they can get an offer that they can't refuse, then sure. But he's kind of like that golden piece for them right now. Where Sean Marks, he doesn't have to trade him this season. There's no rush. He's the one who signed him. He gave him that deal. He obviously believes in him. And Cam Johnson is only 28 years old. Maybe he does value him as a piece that's going to be part of this. I don't know. Again, these are questions that we'll ask come February, maybe a little bit before then. But um, he's exceeded expectations. Obviously, people, if we got a question like this, nobody expected him to be doing what he's doing. But mind you, the opportunities are a lot more open for him to expand his game on a team like this. So,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
any final comments from you on that?
Nah, just keep shooting, Cam. Jordy likes it. I like it. Ball's going through the hoop. Keep it up.
All right, we got our bi-weekly pick watch. Colin, we're gonna need some type of music, some ping pong balls, some type of sound
I'll do
effect,
it. I'll do it.
circus music, something. Our bi-weekly pick watch. The Nets have the rights to Houston's pick right now, which is number 27. New York Knicks, which would be number 22. Milwaukee Bucks, number 18, and the Nets, number 8. The Bucks are starting to get it together. I think that my biggest takeaway from the pick watch is the Bucks are starting to get it together, and that pick isn't looking as juicy as it was the first couple weeks of this season.
I mean, I'm still a Bucks doubter. Like I said last week, it's taking way too much work from Giannis for them to do this, and I just don't know that it's going to last. But the point that I've seen tossed around on Nets Twitter a lot this week and has sparked my interest lately is the concept that, the Nets have their own pick. Odds are that's going to be the highest one. Is there any sort of scenario where they go to another team in the lottery and say, hey, we'll dish you, even if they're up in the 20s, Milwaukee, Houston, New York for another pick in the lottery? Do you think something like that would be possible? I feel like we see that in the NFL a lot.
Yeah,
Not so much in the NBA.
we mentioned that, and I mentioned that and brought it up on Eric Slater's podcast that we hopped on last week, believing that's where I said maybe they do, bundle a couple of these later picks and try and move up. But my hesitance and reluctance in believing that could happen is just how good this draft is and how teams are really, really going to be holding so tight to those picks. I don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you. I don't believe in the Bucks to be anything serious. But they've won 6 in a row. Any team with Giannis Antetokounmpo, even if it's the extra effort, where he's basically like killing himself out there to play and get a win on a team like this. It's like what KD said, "Let me die out there." Like that's what it feels like. We keep using these parallels from that Nets team to this Bucks team, but um, I don't think there'll be a lottery team,
Mm-hmm.
but it would be good enough. And Sean Marks has done like we overlooked this. Sean Marks has done a fantastic job in drafts. Like he's never had a pick that was better than I think 17. I think that was his best pick and or his highest pick, I should say. And he's done very, very well with these late round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's something that's I don't want to. We don't have to sit here for 40 minutes and discuss that, but he's really only failed, I think, 1 year. Musa and Karuk.
Yeah.
But
Kuruc had
otherwise,
some good burn for them for a little while.
he did. Here's
Started 2 or 3 playoff games.
yeah, integral on that 18-19 Nets team.
Mm. Yeah.
But Sean Marks, great drafter. Maybe they bundle him. Maybe they don't. Either way, right now the Bucks are on a 6-game winning streak. The Knicks are kind of seesawing right now. They're good, but they're not great. I think
They
if
got
you're Nets and you're looking at those picks, 18 and 22 right now, you're pretty happy about that, no?
Yeah. I think we talk a ton about are we rooting for wins? Are we rooting for losses? One thing we can all do is root for the Wizards to start winning some games, the Jazz to start winning some games. So between all the infighting with the Nets fans, again, it's not as bad as it was last year, but like if you got league pass, tune into the Wiz Kids, tune into the Jazz, tune into these other teams and be like, hey guys, like, there's some fun things you can do as a tanking team, and that includes, you want to root for a team to win, root for everyone else to win, so that even when the
Yeah.
Nets do win, it's not the end of the world. I don't know. I know the Wizards didn't win a single game in November. That's pretty amazing, honestly.
You've
Maybe
got some bad teams, some really bad. I mean, they've lost 14 in a row. I don't think
at this
anyone's
point,
beaten
it's
them in
like
the
don't be
10.
that team, Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, 2-16. You got the 76ers at 4-14.
I don't even know what to say about Philly. I keep saying it's not going to last down there, but like, holy shit.
I don't think it is either. But and Embiid is on a warpath right now, so I don't know how long he's going to be there. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting times. But hey, cheer for the Sixers, cheer for the Jazz, cheer for the Trailblazers. Let's go NBA. Come
let's
on,
go
guys.
NBA. Root for the Cavs if you want. You got a bunch of old
Be
Nets
like
over
that
there.
that Rob Lowe picture where he's just wearing the NFL hat. That's every other lottery team. Root for them to win. And
Like
then you can be happy as a Nets fan rooting for competitive basketball. That
yeah,
is the key.
those early 2000s NBA hats that would have all the logos on them, or the jackets that would have all
Yes.
the logos on them,
Yes.
is exactly what we are
Mm.
in Nets world right now. So Colin, they're on a 3-game losing streak. They play the Pacers tomorrow. They play the Bucks on Sunday. Believe you'll be at that game on Sunday. Correct,
And
Mundo? Or you'll be
tomorrow.
there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Follow Colin on Twitter, on X, wherever it is that you get your Nets news. If you want to reach out to us, we're the Brooklyn Pod on X, Instagram, TikTok. Email us at thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. Trade window opens in the next episode. We have a guest that'll be coming on to discuss all of that and more. Colin, any final words from you?
Let's see how the Nets defense does against Tyrese Halliburton tomorrow. He has not been playing well. That will be a fun one to watch. There's been a lot of talk about the Nets closing out on threes, their point of attack defense. Let's see how it does. Let's see if Reese can figure it out.
Thank you, sir. On my end, once again, the injury report becomes the main thing to watch before games and tip off. And that kind of sucks. It is a little frustrating.
Yeah.
But anywho, Colin, as I say, it's been real. It's been nice. In other words, it's been real nice. Thank you for everyone that tuned in, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Later, guys.